Here we go. Hey, everybody. This is the last of our kind of video series of math tools at the moment. We're going to get back into thinking about motion and how we measure motion and the pieces that come into that next week. But this tool is the ability to make conversions between not just metric units, but other things, other units and other systems. And it works with everything. We could even do this with metric units if we wanted to, but metric units, of course, scale nicely by factors of 10 and moving decimal points. This, on the other hand, allows us to convert between things that don't have that same nice relationship. So our work for today is about something that I call standard conversions, using a tool called conversion factors. There's still a lot of ways to do this, but I think conversion factors is the most powerful tool that we've got. It's the one that makes the most sense, trying to understand how we go from one unit to another. So that's my goal for today, is to teach you conversion factors using a tool that is called the railroad method or railroad track method. It looks a little bit like a railroad track, and you'll see what I mean as I get my way into it. But to start this journey off, I want to actually start a number of years ago in the United States Peace Corps. So I taught for 5 years, from 2002 to 2007. And then my partner came to me and said, you know what I really want to do? I really want to volunteer in Africa and do work there. And so we started to take a look at different ways to get to Africa. And it turns out that the best way for us to do it, and the way that we felt most confident about the work we'd be doing, was with the United States Peace Corps. Now, the United States Peace Corps was developed in 1960, approximately, with John F. Kennedy. And he was campaigning at the time and ended up at a university in Michigan, I believe, speaking to a group of students. And the Vietnam War was kind of boiling in the background of this, and there were questions about what was going to happen. And there was a group of students, quite a large group of students, that essentially approached John F. Kennedy and said, we want a way to not fight to make things better, but to do peaceful actions, to volunteer in order to bring kind of peace to the world. And so John F. Kennedy said, I agree with you. And when he was in office, he created an executive order to create the United States Peace Corps. Many, many years later, in 2007, I joined the United States Peace Corps with my partner. Now, we'd been married for 5 years at that point in time, and so we went into it together. It used to be such that the Peace Corps was primarily students that had just graduated from college, and they just kind of went straight into the Peace Corps right afterwards in one of the many, 140 some odd different countries that we're in. We went as a married couple, and so we were placed together in the country of South Africa. So I'm going to tell you a little story about post-South Africa. But if you would like to read anything about our journey through that process, I did include a link to our blog, and you can do that on your own. If not, that's fine too, but it might be interesting to find out, and maybe someday you'd like to join the United States Peace Corps as well. It is an amazing entity, which does great work in the world, in my humble opinion. So let's go ahead and get into it. When we left, let me close this little bit here. I don't know if I can hide that or not. When we left South Africa after our 2 years of service, we made the choice to travel. And you can do all sorts of things that way. You can come right back to the United States, but we went ahead and took a stipend that they gave us, which is a kind of readjustment allowance to come back again, and turn that around to do traveling. And we traveled for 52 days after our time, which is a really amazing experience to travel in a continent in many different countries during that time. We left South Africa down here on the bottom in Johannesburg, and we flew actually to Zambia on this trip. Zimbabwe at the time was not a safe place for people with my color skin, white skin. Mugabe was the leader there, and they were executing kind of white folk that were there. So we skipped over the top of Zimbabwe, recognizing that Mugabe was somebody that didn't step down from power, and he took that particular country in a really difficult direction. They used to be the top for education, and they made more food than anybody else. And he didn't step aside as kind of a dictator of sorts at that time, and kind of drove the country into the ground. Anyway, so we flew over the top of Zimbabwe and we landed in Zambia. And in Zambia, we took a train, and that train went from Zambia all the way up to Tanzania. And from Tanzania, we took a bus in Dar es Salaam all the way up to Kenya. And we were in Nairobi in Kenya. We did a little trip over to Uganda, which I don't show on this map, but we went to Uganda for a moment, and we rafted the White Nile, which is an amazing river with class 5 rapids. And then we went back to Nairobi in Kenya, and we flew eventually across to a country called Ghana in West Africa, which is just south of Burkina Faso, along the side of kind of Nigeria in that space. So Ghana is here. Ghana is the size of the state of Oregon. So not a huge country, but it has a huge amount of languages. I think there's 52 official languages. So we spent over 30 days, 36 days, something around there, just traveling in Ghana alone, which was absolutely fabulous. But the reason why I tell you all of this is that in those journeys, when you stop in different places, you want to be able to eat food, and you want to be able to potentially purchase something, which means that as you travel, you have to be able to handle some conversions. And we're going to be talking that in a little bit. So before we get into it, let's see some of these pictures of what's going on in those areas. So this was South Africa. This is on the left-hand side is the house that we lived in for 2 years. And these are the kind of the neighbor kids that we saw around us quite a lot. This is Manana. She's super cute. She must be your age now, which is amazing. And then over here is Mahuhuri, and another neighbor girl that I don't remember. I don't remember her name right at the moment. I'd have to think about it. But sitting around in South Africa, playing the guitar and hanging out. From the train, this is what things look like in Zambia. People would come walking along the side of the train. And yes, absolutely, people carry things on their head all throughout the continent of Africa. And so these people are bringing out plantains, and they'd stand along the side of the train, and then they would sell up through the windows if you would like to purchase something. And this is a typical village that we would see as we were traveling through Zambia. Absolutely gorgeous country. When we got to Tanzania, this is Dar es Salaam up here, which is where we came into, and this is one of the first images that we got. Dar es Salaam is a city that is heavily Muslim, and so that meant that you got off the kind of the bus or the train, and the call to prayer is being kind of pumped through the speakers throughout the city, of course, and people take their time to pray at that moment. And so that's interesting to think about an entire city that fits that way. And also from the train, this was a view that we had of a beautiful little kind of thatched roof village along in Tanzania. By the time we made it to Kenya, we were stopping and visiting some friends of friends, well, family of friends. We had some friends back in the States, and his brother lived in Nairobi. This is Peter here, and Peter was our friend, and he treated us like family when we were there. And so this is Nairobi that you're looking at. But we also took a trip to visit his kind of ancestral home in a place called Kisi. Kisi is a place that does not have any running water, and it does not have any electricity. And it was a beautiful kind of spot where they were doing farming out there. This gentleman right here is actually the security guard at their house. No joke. So he sits at night outside with his bow and arrow outside of the house and make sure that the house is safe. And if they need to travel on, he kind of stays there and makes sure that everything is okay. Primarily security, not from humans that are going to come in and steal stuff, but could be, but often from other kind of predators that might get at their animals, which is why the bow and arrow is there. It's kind of interesting. We eventually got over to Ghana after we flew there. There's an open market in Ghana, absolutely gorgeous space. Ghana is known for colors and foods and drums and really a very fantastic country. It was actually the first country that the United States Peace Corps went into. So this is the first place that volunteers from the United States came to, and we're still there. And what was I going to say? Oh, I don't know. On the right-hand side is just some lovely women and their children kind of walking down the street in Ghana. Maybe it'll come to me. But anyway, so this is Ghana. We were there for 36 days. That was a total. So the story that I want to tell really about all of this is a story of kind of unit conversion, because that's what we're talking about right now. But I'd like to do a kind of African currency to figure things out. So first thing we need to know is, what are the currencies in these different countries? And why would I care? Because as I'm traveling from place to place, I want to be able to kind of spend that money and figure out how things go. So to do this process, we're going to learn about something called a conversion factor. A conversion factor really is a special fraction, a fraction that equals 1. Now, if you take a number like the number 5 and you make it into a fraction over the top of another 5, so 5 over 5, 5 over 5 equals 1. That's 5 divided by 5 is 1, if you can think about it that way. So fractions, something over the same as themselves, is 1. But it's into that fraction, that special fraction that equals 1, we can actually use it to convert one unit to the other. So the second thing to remember is that any number multiplied times 1 is the same value, like 1 times x is x. But if that 1 was actually that special fraction, then we can do some pretty neat things, right? So multiplying a number with a unit times a conversion factor, we can cancel the first unit and change it into the new one that we want. So starting unit times a conversion factor gives us our ending unit in the end. So let's take a look at what this looks like overall. As I said, I'm going to use the railroad method, and the railroad method is this green kind of bar right here. And you can actually do this more than kind of 3 sections. We could keep drawing vertical bars if we wanted to in order to make conversion factors that go in a longer chain. But right now I'm going to focus only on starting units over here, ending units over here, and finding a way to go from one place to the other. So let me show you how they're used and what comes into it. When we get into the middle, this part right here is considered the conversion factor. And we set up this conversion factor in a very special way where we would put the starting units on the bottom and we put the ending units on the top. In this way, those starting units can cancel out. Think of it like a fraction, 5 over 5. They become 1. So starting on top, starting on the bottom, this cancels out, and you're left with only the ending units in the end, which is what you're looking for. So let's go ahead and make some room. If you're following along, I would encourage you to get a piece of paper right now and a pencil so that you can actually do some writing down. There's no substitute for actually playing along with the home game. So take a moment to do that right now and then come back. All right. If you've come back right now and you've got a piece of paper, I would encourage you to make 5 things that look like this on your paper. Give some space in between so you don't crush, one on top of the other. We're going to be writing in each of these kind of blocks in order to make it work. All right. So if you were to go online and look, today, this is what you'd find out. You'd find out that there are certain different currencies in these different countries that have some interesting names, and there are relationships between these currencies. For instance, in South Africa, the name of the currency there is the rand. So in the United States, we've got the dollar. You ever think about that? We call them the USD, the US dollar, right? But in South Africa, we've got the rand. If you travel on to a country called Zambia, then you get a currency called the kwacha. Kwacha. If you go on to Tanzania, then you end up with something called the shilling. Shilling, I think, comes from Spain originally. I think. And then on to Kenya is also a shilling, but they are different currencies. They're not the same thing, so it's not the same kind of coins nor the same amounts. Eventually, when you get up to Ghana, they have something called the Ghanaian cedi. So again, we've got the kwacha or the rand. Maybe I should start over here. The rand, the kwacha, the shilling, two different kinds, and then the Ghanaian cedi. If you look online, you'll notice that 1 South African rand is equal to 1.09 kwacha. Those are pretty close to each other. So the rand and the kwacha are almost the same value. One is slightly greater value and one is slightly less. And in this particular case, the South African rand is slightly more value than the kwacha. If you look kwacha to shillings, you'll notice that this number is quite large, right? Which means that you can buy more kwacha. You can buy more shillings. 1 Zambian kwacha can buy you 122.86 shillings. And buying money sounds weird, but there it goes. So these are some numbers that we're going to use over the next few minutes, and it looks like this. On my travels when I was down in South Africa to start with, I started my journey with 2,500 rand. And you might say to yourself, is that a lot of money? Well, we'll get to that later. Eventually, in the end of my journey, I had cedi. Now, it's true that I spent some bits along the way, but let's imagine for just a moment that I didn't. And I was going from one country to the other, just making a straight comparison, right, as to how much I would get in the end. The other thing to know is just the process of converting money can be tricky. In the United States, you have to go to kind of a business or something that would allow you to do money changing. In other countries, though, sometimes it's just individuals that have other money that are willing to kind of exchange it for you. And the most kind of breathtaking experience of that for me was when we were riding on this train and we were going from Zambia up to Tanzania. And the train, we had our money in our hand, and I knew it was an overnight experience. But I knew that as I had this money, that at a certain point, I was going to cross the border from one place to another. And I needed to make exchanges so that I could be able to use it in the next country. And what ended up happening, and I wasn't expecting this, I had already kind of made note of how much things were worth, and I had to do some calculations to figure this out because I knew these things. I was a previous physics teacher, and I knew that, this is stuff that I could do. And so I'd done it ahead of time. But what happened to me on the train is that we sat in our seat, and the train stopped at the border, and a whole bunch of people got on the train. And the people that got on the train were money lenders, or not lenders, money exchangers, I guess, that had these huge suitcases full of money, right? So they got on the train and they had these big suitcases full of money that they would change. And of course, because they had a big suitcase full of money, they also came with their own bodyguards. So these people using, they had, AK-47s, which is often the weapon of choice around the world because they don't jam very often. Anyway, so they come on with their AK-47s and they got these people with the big suitcases full of money, and they show up at your seat on the train and they say, how much do you want? And now here's the thing. If you don't know how much you have and how much it's going to be, they will rip you off every time. It's in their best interest. If you seem like a foreigner that doesn't know anything, of course you're going to, if you were to hand them your money from whatever country you're coming from, and in this particular case, you hand them the kwacha, and then they count the kwacha for you, and then they hand you the shillings to follow, you are not going to get a fair conversion. So you really need to know your stuff. The second side of things, you need to be the last person touching the money. Everything should be laid out on the table or on a seat, making sure that everything is clear and clean. Either that or you will lose money. So keep those things in mind. Anyway, so I told the guy kind of what I expected to get based on the money that I was going to give to him. He did a quick calculation in his head about what he thought his take of the money should be. And then I agreed to that amount. And then we exchanged the money from one to the other. And this happened a number of times, sometimes at businesses, sometimes as harrowing as some guy standing there with a briefcase full of money with 2 bodyguards with AK-47 standing behind him. Fascinating stuff. So let's look at how I could do something like that in order to make sure that I have the right amounts. I'm going to use this railroad method, and I'm going to start out here with the 2,500 rand, and I'm going to move that over to the kwacha. That's ZMK, stands for the Zambian kwacha. And this is the South African Rand, ZAR, Zuid-African Rand. They have a big influence from the Dutch. And they speak, many of them speak Afrikaans, which was a language that was developed as kind of a bastardized version of the Dutch. So here we got ZAR from South Africa. We've got ZMK from Zambia, and we're going to make a switch. I'm going to start out by drawing this line, and I'd like you to go ahead and draw one on your piece of paper if you haven't done so yet. And we're going to start plugging in the pieces where they need to go in order to make this conversion. So where I'm going to start out is I'm going to plug in the thing that I have to begin with right up on the top. And I'm going to plug in the thing that I want to get to over on the other side. And that's going to look like this. So here's my starting point. That's what I want to do. In the middle, I'm going to put my conversion factor. And if you remember the conversion factor, I want to put the thing that I want to get rid of on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to put the one that I want to have left over on the top. So the South African Rand goes on the bottom and the kwacha goes on the top. And then I need to figure out what numbers are going to go next to this right in the middle. Now, I gave you some conversion factors originally on that first screen a little bit ago. And I'm going to just plug those in right here. These are ones that you can look up online or bits like that. And they change day to day. Not a whole bunch usually, but they change. So here is 1 South African Rand is equal to 1.09 kwacha. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing we can do is we can go ahead and cancel the South African Rand because one's on the top and one's on the bottom. Now, I'm not going to do anything with the numbers, just cancel the words or the units. I'm going to treat them like a thing. And then this is a fraction that is all joined together, but I'm going to multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom, and then I'm going to divide if I need to. Well, 2,500 times 1.09 comes across here, and then I've got a 1 that's on the bottom, and if I divide by 1, it's the same thing. So really what I've got is 2,500 times 1.09, and that gives me my ending result here of 2,734.77. So if it was a straight conversion from one side to the other, I would say that 2,500 Rand is equal to 2,734.77 kwacha. All right, that being the case, we can start kind of filling in this chart here, and we can say that 2,500 Rand is equal to 2,734 kwacha. That 0.77. But how many shillings is this? Well, let's do this one more time. I'm not going to do all of them because it will take a while. But I did do all of them, of course, to make sure that I knew what I was figuring out before. But let's go from kwacha to shillings. So here we go. If I've got the 2,734.77 kwacha and I want to go over here to shillings, I'm going to make my railroad tracks, which you maybe already have your railroad tracks on your paper, and you can start filling things in. I'm going to put the thing that I already know here, and I'm going to put the thing that I want over here. So it's going to look like this. So 2,734.77 kwacha and shillings on the other side. And then my conversion factor is going to go in the middle. I'm going to put the kwacha on the bottom and the shillings on the top because I want the kwacha to cancel, one on the top, one on the bottom, and I want the shillings to be what's left over. The numbers by conversion factor are going to come from that original screen, and that original screen said that, hey, 1 kwacha is equal to 122.86 Tanzanian shillings. Do the same thing we did before. We're going to cancel our kwacha, so those are gone. The only thing that's left is the shillings. We're going to multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom, and then we're going to get a number here. Now, if we multiply across the top, we get this number here, and across the bottom is just 1, so we just leave it for this particular case. So that means that now my original 2,500 Rand has turned into 307,164.28 shillings. Now that's amazing. I'm walking around now with new money, and I've got 307,000 shillings. Now, is 307,000 shillings a huge amount of money? Well, it's equal to 2,500 Rand, but is 2,500 Rand a lot of money? We'll get there in just a moment to see whether or not this is the case. But it's fascinating to think that you might end up with, 307,000s of a currency, even though you might start with something quite a bit smaller. So let's plug that in here, and we say, hey, 2,500 Rand is this many kwacha, is this many shillings, and we could keep going through this entire kind of project until we find out how much Ghanaian money we have in the end? And the answer is this ends up with 14,000 shillings in Kenya, and then it drops way down to 765.25 Ghanaian cedi. Now, when I say it drops way down, does that mean that the value of this thing drops down? Am I losing money here? And the answer is no, I'm not losing any money, right? This is the same value. The 2,500 Rand to begin with is the same value as the 765.25 cedi. They're the same amount. They just have a different unit, and so the number shifts. Same idea with my height. I'm 195 centimeters tall, and I'm 6 feet and 3 inches, right? 6 feet 3 inches is about the same as 195 centimeters. The numbers are different, but the value is the same of my height. So how much really is all this money? Am I talking about exorbitant amounts of money? Well, let's make a comparison between South African Rand and US dollars. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and drop in here my South African Rand here, my US dollars there. And I'm going to make my conversion factor so that my Rand is going to go on the bottom and that my US dollars are going to go on the top. And so that's here so that my Rand can cancel and my dollars can be left over. Now, this time around, the conversion factor that I found had a relationship between 1 US dollar is equal to how many Rand. That just happens to be what I found, and this is what it is. So 1 US dollar is equal to 17.26 Rand today, right? That's what we know. But how do I go about doing this? Well, first, my Rands cancel, but now I said I multiply across the top, and I multiply across the bottom, and then I divide. Well, 2,500 times 1 is 2,500. 17.26, there's nothing else on the bottom, so it's really going to be 2,500 divided by 17.26. And if I take the 2,500 divided by 17.26, what I get is 169.61. So when I started this journey, I had $169.61. And I traveled along my way and I converted this money throughout my travels. And of course, I bought things throughout. And so I didn't have the same amount when I started, when I ended. But it's important to know that I could make my conversions at any point as long as I knew approximately what the conversion factors are for these. Well, I'd like you to use this tool to try some problems on your own. And up at the top are my conversion factors that you could look up or that I've given you on different resource pages. Like this one, it says that 1 pound is equal to 4.448 newtons. This is units of force. Or 1 mile per hour is the same as 1.61 kilometers per hour. And I don't know why they put kph. It should really be kmph, kilometers per hour. But they often just throw it in as kph. I don't know. 1 meter is equal to 3.28 feet, and 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet, right? So we can make some conversions going from one to the other. I suggest that right now, if you understand how to set these things up, you give this a try on your own and see if you can come up with how many newtons, meters, miles per hour, and miles are these varying amounts based on the information. I'm going to go ahead and walk through each of these in just a moment, but if you try them on your own, you'll actually learn more, I promise. So let's go ahead and walk through these 4, just in case. You can check your own work if you've already done it, which I hope that you have. So here they are. Starting out, let's look at 160 pounds is equal to how many newtons. So if I set this up, I'm going to make my railroad track just like I regularly would here. I'm going to put my 160 pounds here, and I'm going to put my newtons over there, right? That's the way I set this up. And then my conversion factor goes in here. I want my pounds to cancel and my newtons to be left over. So I'm going to put the pounds on the bottom and the newtons on the top. Now I need to relate these two things to one another. And that's 1 pound is equal to 4.448 newtons. Now, how do I do this? Well, the pounds are going to cancel. You multiply across the top, and what you walk away with is 711.68 newtons, right? So 160 times 4.448 pounds cancel, and all I'm left with are newtons. Same kind of deal for feet to meters. Set up the same kind of deal here. 500 feet goes on the top. Meters go on the right, left and right. We put the feet on the bottom and the meters on the top because I want the feet to cancel. And then I need to know my conversion factor here. And 1 meter is equal to 3.281 feet. So now when I multiply across the top, I get 500 times 1. That would be 500 on top. On the bottom, the only thing I have left over is 3.281. So now I'd have 500 divided by 3.281. And I walk away with 152.39. All right, doing okay. Last two. 100 kilometers per hour is how many miles per hour? So setting it up the same way. On the left-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and put my 100 kilometers per 1 hour. Now, this is the tricky bit when it comes to the per. This P right here is an indication that it's a fraction. It is a ratio already. Per means ratio or fraction. So if I did kilometers per hour, this is 100 kilometers per 1 hour. I'm traveling 100 kilometers in 1 hour. And I can do the exact same thing over here, and I can figure out, well, how many miles it is per hour. So I'm going to put the miles on the top and the hours on the bottom. So what am I going to do here? What do I want to cancel? Well, the hours are going to stay the same. They're on the same on both. The kilometers are going to change to miles. What I really need in here is I need an ability to have kilometers on the bottom to cancel and the miles on the top, so they're left over. Cool. So if we plug in miles and kilometers relationship, 1 kilometer is equal to 0.6 miles. Multiply across 100 times 0.6 and 1 times 1. So whatever 100 times 0.6 is what I get. And the answer is 60, which means that 100 kilometers per hour is about 60 miles per hour. That's cool, right? Over here, 10,000 feet is how many miles? So let's take a look. Do the same thing. Oh, I think I made a mistake here. Anyway, let's pretend that this is 3,800. I think that's the way this is going to go. Sorry about that. I'll make a correction in my other one. So feet cancel out. Feet go on the bottom because they need to cancel. 1 mile is left. This time I'm multiplying across the top, multiplying across the bottom. So 3,800 or 38,000, excuse me. Yeah, 38,000 divided by 5,280. And we walk away with 7.2. Yeah, that looks about right. So sorry about this 10,000 here. Just didn't make a change. Cool. So that's the way all of these work. I have an assignment that I'm giving you right now, and I'd like you to go ahead and express your answers using this tool. So I am looking for, on this handout, not just the answer, because you can totally get the answer by using Google, right? What I want for you to do on this handout is to actually show me the railroad track method, just to practice. If you've got other methods for this, you can use those on your own time. But for this particular assignment, I'd like you to go ahead and show me the railroad tracks. And so I'm going to drop that assignment in, and I'd like you to do that using the conversion factors and see if you can do this process, converting from one thing to the other. All right. I wish you the best of luck as you're working your way into it. Think about joining the United States Peace Corps someday. I can tell you much more about it if you are curious. If not, I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.